Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're doing something a little different, not dissecting a specific event, really. Instead, we're looking at, well, it's like an intellectual tool set, almost a blueprint for how to analyze language itself. Okay, so let's unpack this. The source material we've got here, it's this really detailed template. Think of it like an instruction manual. It's for a project called the Daily Success Word Deep Dive with Dr. Tamara Patzer. And it's designed to, really take apart the meaning of important words, often words that are pretty charged politically or emotionally. It feels like we're looking under the hood of an engine designed to fix maybe corrupted language.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, actually. And if you think about the bigger picture, this method is valuable precisely because it's built for navigating language that's full of distortion, where meanings get twisted.
What?
The real insight here is the intellectual discipline it forces on you.
Right. So our mission for you, the listener, is basically to map out this project structure. We want to show you the key steps involved in really analyzing a single word, especially one that's maybe misunderstood, tracing it all the way from its, ancient roots right up to how it feels and functions today. So this whole approach, it seems built around one big goal, right? Exploring just one word, but really deeply, going way beyond just looking it up in a dictionary. It's about tracing biblical, historical, cultural, even political meanings.
Yeah.
Definitely not a quick search.
No, not at all. And what's interesting is how it all centers on the mission set out by Dr. Patzer herself. Every single analysis has to start by grappling with her core question. What does this particular word really mean? That immediately sets the tone. It's not about gut reactions. It's about structured inquiry from the get-go.
Okay, but I wonder, that starting point, looking at the classical or biblical meaning first, isn't there a risk there? Does it sort of imply that the original meaning is automatically the best or the truest one? Could that introduce a bias?
That's a fair question. I don't think the template necessarily says the original meaning is the best, but rather that it's the essential baseline, the foundation. You kind of need to know where something started to measure how far it's drifted, right?
Ah, okay.
Without that root, you can't really map the changes accurately. The historical shifts, the later distortion.
That makes sense. You establish the standard before you measure the deviation from it.
Exactly. And setting that standard naturally leads to the endpoint the template demands, which is pretty challenging. The analysis has to wrap up with a reflection on how to reclaim the true meaning of our words. So it's not just analysis for analysis' sake. It pushes towards restoration, or at least clarity, urging you to consciously pick the most constructive meaning to use moving forward.
Okay, that brings us nicely to the roadmap itself, the analytical steps. This is where the structure really comes through. For anyone listening who appreciates, a clear plan, this seems to offer exactly that, a 6-point guide for digging in. And this is where it gets really interesting for me. The method insists you trace the entire life cycle of the word. You can't just jump to the modern meaning or the current controversy.
That holistic view is definitely the strength here. It lays out 6 specific focus points that every deep dive must cover. The first couple are about setting the historical stage. 1, the original meaning could be biblical, classical, whatever the earliest known sense is. And 2, historical transformations. This means really tracing how it evolved, maybe century by century, looking for those subtle shifts in usage.
Okay, history first.
Right. But then the next 2 steps, I think, are where the real intellectual heavy lifting happens. This is where language meets power and emotion. So 3, cultural or political distortion. This is absolutely crucial. When and how did the meaning get manipulated? Maybe even weaponized, used for an agenda. Okay. Identifying the corruption point.
Precisely. And then 4, the symbolism or archetype linked to the word. How does it function in deeper stories, myths, literature, those foundational human narratives?
So wait, if step 3 finds the moment the word got sort of hijacked for politics, then step 4 explains the underlying emotional pull, the symbolic weight that made the hijacking effective. You need both.
Exactly. You've got it. A distorted word only really has power if it still resonates with something deeper, some kind of primal meaning or symbol. If you connect this to the bigger picture, understanding that combination helps you become more resistant to rhetorical tricks. It helps you see what's going on.
Like an inoculation.
Kind of, yeah. Then we get to the present day. 5, the present day emotional or social interpretations.
Yeah.
How does the word feel now? What baggage does it carry today? And finally, step 6, that essential wrap-up, reclaiming meaning. which isn't just summarizing, it's about figuring out a path to use the word constructively again. I also noticed something interesting in the instructions themselves. The template actually requires engagement. This is, you have to include one humorous or surprising insight along the way.
Oh, right.
It's like an explicit reminder. Be rigorous, yes, but don't be dull. Find that little nugget, that fascinating detail that makes the history stick.
Yeah, that's a great feature. It keeps it human.
For instance, I was thinking, if you analyzed a word like nice, seems simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
But originally, back in the 13th century, it meant something closer to foolish or ignorant.
Really? Ignorant.
Yeah, that massive shift from ignorant to pleasant or agreeable, that's exactly the kind of surprising insight the template seems to be asking for. It shows just how dramatically a word's meaning can drift over centuries.
That's a perfect example. It really highlights why you need that whole historical view. It's like a linguistic GPS tracking the drift.
Definitely. Okay, let's pivot now to the kinds of words this framework is meant to tackle. Looking at the sample words provided in the template, wow, it's clear they're not picking easy ones. They're going straight for the really charged vocabulary, the words the heart of today's debates.
Absolutely. The scope is deliberately broad and challenging, and it mixes different categories, which reflects how complex our discourse is now. So you've got these big, abstract, almost timeless concepts: freedom, faith, truth, justice, success, greatness, even rainbow. These are deep roots.
Right, the philosophical heavyweights. But then, like you said, it shifts gears pretty drastically.
It does. It moves right into contemporary political and cultural labels, things like woke, conservative, liberal, patriot. I mean, these are terms where the meaning is fought over daily, often used more like badges than actual descriptors.
Tribal markers, yeah.
And then there's a third category: specific movements or slogans. Black Lives Matter, Me Too, Make America Great Again, fake news, cancel culture. Choosing to analyze entire phrases alongside single words like truth really underscores this need for clarity everywhere, doesn't it? Not just with old words, but with a brand new, politically charged phrases, too.
Okay, let's talk about the challenge that creates for the analysis itself. How does the process, those 6 steps, actually change if you're tackling, say, justice with thousands of years of philosophy behind it versus something really new and explosive like woke?
That contrast is exactly why the 6-step structure is so useful, I think. It adapts. For justice, steps 1 and 2, the origin and the history, that's a massive undertaking, right? You're diving into Plato, Roman law, religious texts, centuries of thought. Step 3, the political distortion, might involve tracking subtle shifts over long periods.
Okay, a deep historical dive.
Yeah.
But for a term like woke or maybe cancel culture,
Yeah, for those, steps 1 and 2 are probably quite shallow, historically speaking. The origin might only go back a decade or two, maybe even less for some uses. But step 3, the cultural or political distortion, that becomes the main event. It's huge. You're charting incredibly rapid, almost explosive shifts in meaning, and immediate weaponization, how it got picked up and used politically almost overnight.
so the framework holds, but the weighting of the steps changes dramatically.
Exactly. It depends entirely on the word's age and its current political utility. The structure is flexible enough for both ancient concepts and modern hashtags.
You know, hearing this, it makes the whole methodology feel like an attempt to build, like an intellectual immune system.
I like that metaphor.
It teaches you how to spot when a word is being used historically as a concept versus when it's being deployed tactically as a political tool.
That really captures it. The template itself says they pick words that have been politicized, misunderstood, or emotionally charged. If you think of language as society's operating system, this project is like running the diagnostic and repair tool on the most problematic files, the ones causing system crashes.
Okay, let's shift one more time and look at the communication style this template requires, because that's just as specific as the analysis steps. It actually calls for a blend. The calm authority you might hear on NPR mixed with the insightful delivery of a TED Talk and also the approachability of like a fireside chat.
Yeah, it's aiming high, trying to be credible, but also really engaging and accessible, maximize reach, I suppose. And it even gets specific about the speaker roles, the dynamic. It wants a two-voice conversation. There's the journalist described as warm, curious, maybe a bit humorous, and the analyst who should be thoughtful, historically grounded, and balanced.
Wait a second. That sounds suspiciously familiar, doesn't it? A bit like our setup here.
Well, maybe there's some resemblance.
It seems like the journalist might handle driving the conversation, asking the questions, maybe bringing in that surprising insight, or the present-day emotional angle, while the analyst provides the historical depth, the structure, the connections. kind of shouldering steps 1 through 4.
I think that's a pretty sharp observation, actually. The template's design suggests the dialogue structure itself should almost mirror the analytical journey. Curiosity and engagement from one side, historical weight and careful analysis from the other.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you, the listener? Why should you care about this template?
I think the main value here is the sheer intellectual discipline it demands. By forcing the analysis through those 6 rigorous steps, especially tracking the history and the political distortion, it pulls the discussion away from just knee-jerk reactions and surface heat. It insists on context, comprehensive context before you make a judgment. Absolutely. And that comprehensive context is what enables the final crucial step, reclaiming meaning. This isn't just an academic exercise in semantics. It's about empowering people, empowering you to potentially restore a word, to bring it back to its truest or most constructive sense, as the template puts it. It means you can consciously choose how you define and use these loaded terms, instead of just passively accepting whatever politicized definition gets thrown at you. It shifts you from just consuming language to actively shaping clear communication.
That really is the core takeaway, isn't it? The power that comes from having a clear, rigorous method, those 6 points when you're faced with really charged words. It gives you the tools you need to carefully take apart a word that's been weaponized and maybe rebuild it based on something more solid, more original, more constructive.
So maybe a final thought for you to consider on your own. If this method insists on tracing a word's political distortion, think about your own daily vocabulary. Is there a word you use, maybe without even thinking much about it, that could really benefit from this kind of 6-step deep dive? Try to zero in on that gap. What was its original meaning, perhaps? And what's the powerful, often inflammatory, emotional charge it carries for you or for others right now? That difference, that's definitely something worth exploring.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.